Well, I think it's an interesting point, and we'll bring in Justice Delos Santos into the conversation right now. Covers the San Francisco Giants on a day in and day out basis for the Bay Area News Group, the Splash Considerations podcast. And I know, Justice, you're going to release an article a little bit later talking about the 1-year anniversary of the blockbuster trade for Rafael Devers. And let's start right there. It's been 1 year, and we were just doing a little compare contrast for when the Giants were at a year ago today. They were 10 games over 500 heading into a series against the Los Angeles Dodgers. Fast forward to now, the team is 14 games under 500. Rafael Devers is batting just .235, and it's been a mess. Take off wherever you want to go in regards to Rafael Devers. I was going to ask how you'd grade the trade. Do you think Giants fans are being too hard if they want to pull the plug on the guy right now? Like, where are you at with Rafael Devers as a San Francisco Giant a year later?
Morning, y'all. Hope y'all having a great morning so far. And I think y'all know me enough to know, like, I don't like grading trades yet. Like, we're still 1 year in, and you know, we could be talking about this trade 2 years from now, and like some might say it's an F, and then a year from now, some might say it's an A plus. Just like, we don't know. There has been a substantial amount of time. I don't feel comfortable enough to grade it. I will say it's not trending in a great direction. I think that's pretty obvious from the way that the team has performed. They're, I think, 69 and 74, 73, whatever the math shakes out there. They played exactly 162 games. Devers has been just okay as a Giant. Like, he's still like 13% better than a league average hitter, but obviously not what he's been in Boston. And, you know, the team it hasn't been great overall for him or the team. I think if we want to bring some levity into this, if we can bring some levity into this real quick, just a fun memory from that day itself. I remember around the 5th inning, the Dodgers beat reporter for The Athletic, Bobby Ardai, he shot me a text and he said, Joey Lucchese's warming up in the bullpen. And I said, no, he's not. He's been in the minors this whole year. We haven't seen him. He said, look at the video board. And I'm like, what are you talking about? And I look at the video board and it says, Joey Lucchese warming up. I'm like, when did he get here? It was just like, they hadn't even announced like the roster moves that like Harrison was gone and Lucchese was there. So it was just a crazy day overall. But getting back to the trade at hand, it's obviously hasn't been great for either party. There's still a lot of time left. And I'm not going to give a grade. I know we like grades.
Well, forget grades. Forget grades then. Forget Justice. Like, so a couple things that I was thinking about from that weekend is like, the Boston media made it out like this guy's filled with drama. I don't think that's been the case. Boston media kept telling me how out of shape and unreliable he was in terms of being in the everyday lineup. And I don't think that has been, he's a little heavy, there's no doubt, but he's been in the lineup every day. I mean, he is available every day. They talked about his defense. I think he's been pretty good at first base. It's been a lot better in the last 2 months than the first month of the year. Now, where he's been bad, where I thought he'd be better, situational hitting. I just think his approach has been very specific. Swing at everything, I don't care. And that goes back into the discipline, meaning his plate discipline overall. Like, there's been a couple areas where I think I was worried too much about things that have not come to fruition, but I overrated maybe the offensive approach as a whole. If you were to pick one on each side, some good and some bad, what's the thing that you overrated and something that maybe you underrated after seeing him play for a year?
I don't know if overrated is the right term, but I think it was definitely hard to ignore like all the noise that happened surrounding his trade, because obviously last year the Red Sox brought in Alex Bregman to play for third base, and Devers is like, no, I'm not going to play third base. And then he relents and said, all right, I'll be DH rather. And then when Tristan Casas has the season-ending injury, they ask him to play first. He doesn't play first. So, you see that from an outsider, and obviously you don't know what's going on. And that hasn't been the case with Devers. Like, he's done pretty much anything that they've asked him to do. He's not exactly someone that's going to want to talk with us on an everyday basis, but, me personally, like, it's not, it's okay for me. Like, that's just, some guys just don't want to talk every day. And even if, they're making that money, it is what it is. Like, these are just personalities, and that's what you kind of deal with as a reporter. But the one thing that stuck out, and it's kind of been interesting this season in particular, is the lack of walks. Because last year it was a career high in walks. It was 112 walks. His previous career high was 67. This year he's on pace for 50. And what's been really weird is that, he's swinging a little more at pitches outside of the zone. But what's really stood out is that pitchers are attacking him in zone more than they ever have. It's roughly 50% of the pitches that he sees this entire season have been in the zone. And that's the highest percentage since he was a rookie in 2017, which means that pitchers are challenging him more, essentially. And, when he was in Boston in 21, 22, 23, 24, he was making pitchers pay for challenging him, and he just hasn't been able to do that this season. Now, something a bit has been made of the bat speed. It was not great in the first month. I think it was a tick down. It's been back up to where it was last year, but it is part of what's been kind of a 3-4 year decline, whatever you want to say. It was like 73 miles an hour in 2023, little down in 2024, and then a little more down in 25. So that's going to be the thing, like, going forward, I continue to monitor. But I think that just the one thing that's, to kind of pin a bow on this is just the offense just hasn't been there overall. We've seen it in spurts. He's had some runs. He had one in May. He's had some last year, but we just haven't consistently seen the Rafael Devers capable of putting up one of those 35 homer, 100 RBI seasons for a long period of time.
Justice Delos Santos joining us here on the River Islands guest line, covers the Giants for the Bay Area News Group, Splash Considerations podcast, and talking about the Rafi Devers trade a year later, a year to the day, June 15th, Father's Day weekend of last year. And moving off from Rafi Devers, I think the emergence of Bryce Eldridge this last month and a half has really, helped Giants fans at least cope with how bad that trade has gone down thus far, to say, hey, you know what? We got this 21-year-old guy, super young. This is a phenom. We finally have maybe a guy that not only, could be the face of a franchise, wants to be the face of a franchise. Because I think another thing is talking about Rafi Devers, and you kind of just alluded to it, Justice. He doesn't, I think, want to be that guy. Maybe that's unfair of me to say. He just doesn't give me the vibes of a guy that, embraces being a face of a franchise. I remember going back to that presser when they brought him in. You had all the names and people around, the Barry Bonds of the world. We were asking questions about, hey, is this guy going to hate the Dodgers? Like, he hated the Yankees with the Red Sox and lived for these moments. I do think the emergence of Bryce Eldridge, although in a short amount of time, has really taken off some of maybe the pressure that was, on Devers. Do you kind of feel that or get what I'm saying there?
Yeah, I don't think Devers was ever going to kind of be positioned in that forward-facing role, because when I think of face of the franchise, it's not necessarily your best player. It's kind of the person that, is going to be in front of the cameras when things are going good, the person that's going to be in front of the cameras when things aren't going so good. And if you had to describe one right now, it's Logan Webb. Like, the day of the Devers trade, that's the guy that we went with. And it's a little different when it's position players because, with all due respect to starting pitchers, they only play once every 5 days, whereas, position players are every single day. You typically see more of position players being the face of the franchise. But, to the point about Eldridge is, like, he kind of said it after Wednesday, after he hit the walk-off grand slam, is like, this is what he wanted. He didn't want to just be a guy. He wants greatness. He talks often about wanting to be one of the legendary names here. He's talked about wanting to be the guy here in San Francisco. And that's kind of what he's essentially said. And he said it very plainly. He's like, I want to be the face of this franchise, and kind of everything that comes with that. And right now he's a 21-year-old rookie and things have been going great. He's been one of the best. If you really cherry pick a little bit and bring the parameters down to only like 100 plate appearances, he's been one of the best hitters in baseball. And, he's eventually going to have a cold slump. The league is going to adapt to him in some way. He's going to have to adapt back. But, the first, two-ish months of Bryce Eldridge's major league career have gone really well. And kind of bringing it back to Devers, though, the one thing that they're going to have to figure out in the long term is how does that relationship play out, and how does that kind of affect how they build the roster, in future years, because those guys can only play two positions, first base and DH. And as we kind of saw yesterday with Bryce Eldridge trying to stretch a single into a double, he's not exactly the most fleet-footed of guys. So I know that, some fans might be thinking of the Brandon Belt thing, but I don't, in left field, but I don't think that would be happening anytime soon, just based off, the speed there. So they're going to have to figure that out. And, this is kind of one of the consequences of having a very pretty inflexible roster of big contracts, is now you kind of going to have to maneuver and figure out exactly how do you maximize the core group of guys you have with the money you've already put on the books. And that's kind of the big thing with the Devers trade going forward of how you evaluate it.
I mean, Belt could not play left field. He's just at all. And I think Bryce might be
he tried.
Yeah, no, he was terrible. No, he was terrible. I would go back even further, Justice, because Orlando Cepeda and Willie McCovey, they were going back and forth on who's at first and who's in left field, and it just didn't work. I look at the positional redundancy you're referencing, DH and first base. I think it's made it actually really hard for Tony Vitello to pick and choose. Devers has made it pretty clear he likes to be in the field. Some guys need to play in the field to get their mind off hitting. Very few guys can do what I call the Edgar Martinez, the Poppy, Yordan Alvarez now, where all they want to do is hit. If they came to you, the Giants, right now, and they said, hey, we're looking at this timeshare, what would your suggestion be in terms of how you navigate defense at first base for the remainder of this year? What would your suggestion be to them?
I think you got to play it by ear a little bit. I think you definitely got to get Eldridge a little more first base than what he's been getting because, they spoke a lot about his development at the major league level, and that development isn't just hitting. Like, he's hit great so far, but it's also playing first base because when you consider that, Eldridge and Devers are almost exactly 8 years apart. Devers is 29, Eldridge is 21. There is going to come a point, like if this marriage is long-term and these guys are still on the team like 3, 4, 5 years from now, both of them, eventually it's going to have to be Devers at the DH and eventually it's going to have to be Eldridge at first base. So I think, it is difficult. Devers does want to play first base, and we did see Eldridge get a day at first base yesterday, but I think that's the big thing is sprinkling him in just a little more than he's gotten. I don't know the number off top, but it's not a lot. And then, once you get into 27, 28, 29, you kind of go from there. You kind of see where Devers is at physically, things of that nature. But I think going forward this year, just try to find a little more spots to get Eldridge on the field because he's a big guy. He's a big target over there.
Justice, obviously, we're a couple months away. It's still a long way to go till the trade deadline, but you got a couple guys that are rental candidates. Luis Ariz, Robbie Ray, and I want to stick on Ray here for a second. He's been not good, right? Compared to what he was at the first half of last season where he looked like this guy looked like a Cy Young candidate, looked like the 1-2 punch of him and Logan Webb was unstoppable. Now Logan Webb obviously dealt with some injuries, went on the IL. Now he's looking like the old Logan Webb. What's going on with Robbie Ray, man? And how much are these struggles going to affect his overall value come trade deadline time?
Yeah, it's been really weird with Ray. I think the biggest thing is just the walks. And it's kind of the root of everything has just been the command so far is that, he's getting into these outings where it's like the fourth inning and he's already in the 70, 80 pitch range and just hasn't been able to go deep into games in the way that he was last year. And this was kind of one of my big concerns coming into the season with the rotation is, which version of Robbie Ray what are we going to see? Were we going to see 2025 first half or 2025 second half? And it's been kind of more akin to the second half when he kind of faded down the stretch. And as far as value, I think that there's still going to be some teams out there, even with the remainder of whatever's on his contract, because he isn't expiring, that they're willing, to take a flyer on him, see if they can get their hands on him, see if there's anything that they can just, see if there's, maybe have different visions than what the Giants coaching staff is doing. So I don't think it's going to tremendously impact maybe the return, but I think that there's still going to be some interest there. But, obviously it's a little more difficult to garner that interest when the starts like the last couple that he's had have kind of been accumulating in the way they have.
Luis Ariz can be traded today without his approval because of the way that his one-year contract is written. Do you think this is a guy that they hold on until the deadline, or are they going to get a little out in front of this? They've got Ramos coming back at some point here. They've got kind of a logjam of positional players. How do you see this shaking down?
Yeah, I think some of it will depend on how, the next couple of weeks will go because, some of those wild card teams that were really off to a hot start about a month ago have kind of faded a little bit. And so I think that they want to, maybe wait and see, maybe they rattle out. Again, this is a team that hasn't swept and they haven't even won 4 games in a row. But I think, and you kind of want to hold on to your chips as long as you can. I know, the Devers trade last year did come a month before the trade deadline, but I think they want to hold on to their chips as long as they can, see if they can get into striking range of 500 by the time the August or trade deadline comes around. And again, it just hasn't been a lot of great baseball to this point. That's asking a lot for a team that hasn't won 4 games in a row. But, if the time does come, it is – with Ramos in particular, it is interesting because if you just play the offensive numbers, that would mean like moving Jung-Hoo back to center and like Schmidt to right, which for all the emphasis on outfield defense in the offseason, that's not a great defensive alignment. And, Harrison Bader's obviously injured right now, and so that might just be the way they have to go about it. But then when Bader comes back, it's like, all right, like, what do you do? And, trading Ariz would kind of allow some of those dominoes or those puzzle pieces to fall into place. But you're trading one of the best second basemen in baseball up to this season. So I think it's really dependent. I think it really just depends on how these next couple weeks shake out, if the Giants can finally make a run. But, again, tall task for a team that hasn't even won 4 games in a row and hasn't even swept this far.
Justice, I'll leave you with this one. What did you make of the elbow strain IL stint that, Keaton Winn's going on now, and it coming after him pitching on 3 consecutive days? I know you asked Tony Vitello about it. A couple other reporters asked him as well. Do you think there's a causation there with Winn pitching 3 straight days and him now going on the IL?
I wish I was a doctor to answer that question, but I think it's, you see 3 straight outings, something that he's literally never done before because he's been a starter. And you think about his history of elbow issues. He had the Tommy John in 21. He had the ulnar nerve replacement transition surgery, whatever it's called, in 24. So you think back to those. You think about how, this is pretty much his first full season as a reliever. He's only ever had 4 back-to-backs in his career. And it's you start thinking they're probably played a role into that. And I will note this because I think a lot of fans and, to a certain extent justifiably are blaming Vitello. I think there also is, a degree. I'm not saying it's fully on Keaton, but it is to him on a degree to say hey, I'm down for the day, because it's not uncommon for relievers to say hey, I pitched 2 days in a row. My arm doesn't feel great. I'm unavailable today. And obviously managers aren't going to tell us that before a game, but that's just something in the back of their head, all right, this guy's not available. We got to use the pieces that we have. But, that being said, I think it does to also an extent fall on Tony to be this guy was just pitching in Chicago however many hours ago. We got in at 4 a.m. because it was a Sunday night baseball game. His body's probably not fully recovered. He's already pitched 2 days in a row. Let's maybe try to shy away from him. Let's try to go with Dylan Smith, Eric Miller, whoever you have, and just try to figure, or go to Logan Webb to finish the game. Just try to figure it out from there and understand, we could use Keaton, but it's also June, and this is a guy with not a ton of experience. So that's my long-winded way of saying, I think Keaton maybe should have been a little more vocal about saying I'm not available on Monday, but I think Tony also has to recognize, even if a guy doesn't explicitly say it, you might want to shy away from the guy that's never done 3 days in a row.
Justice, I don't know what level you played at or whatever, but the number one rule for anyone, I don't care what level you're at, if your arm does not feel good, it is not on a coach. It is on you to tell us how you feel ahead of time so that we know, so we can be extra cautious, period. I mean, that's anyone who cares about any individual on any level, which I'm assuming all these guys do, it's up to the athlete to know their body, and sometimes they make bad mistakes. You think you feel good and you just don't, or maybe you want to hide it because you want to be a tough guy, and your point is well taken. I agree with you. I think there's a big pie chart of culpability, and a lot of guys share a slice on this. Keaton himself.
Yeah, for sure. And, it's, you always want to be available, but, again, it's ask any reliever. If you ever have a chance, ask any reliever. Ask them, have you ever told your manager, I'm not available today? And a lot of them will say yes. And, yes, these are guys, I don't want to reveal personal conversations, but, some of these guys, want to go until their arm falls off, essentially. But, sometimes, even those guys will be yeah, I just can't do it today.